Mark Harrison threw the heavy stack of documents across the mahogany desk, the paper edges catching the light like knives before scattering across the expensive Persian rug. In the corner of the room, 5-year-old Leo flinched, his small hands pressing tightly over his ears as a low, rhythmic whimper escaped his lips. Amara did not flinch. She simply knelt down, her dark skin a stark contrast to the white vellum of the legal contracts she began to gather with steady, graceful hands. "You are just the help, Amara. Your job is to change diapers and make sure my son doesn't burn the house down, not to stick your nose into my private equity deals." Mark roared, his face flushed a deep, angry red. He didn't see the way her eyes scanned the complex tax indemnity clauses on page 42 as she stacked them, her mind processing the predatory interest rates in milliseconds. "Get out of my house. I want you packed and gone by sunset. I don't pay you to have opinions on my board of directors." He continued, his voice shaking the crystal decanters on the sideboard. Amara stood up, her posture regal despite the simple cotton uniform she wore, and looked him directly in the eye with a calm that felt like a physical weight. "If you sign this merger at 10 tomorrow, Mr. Harrison, you won't be a billionaire by noon. You'll be a defendant in a federal fraud case," she said, her voice smooth as silk. She dropped the stack onto the desk and added, "Your partner isn't just stealing your millions. He is erasing your family's entire future, and he's using your own signature to do it." Mark opened his mouth to deliver another insult, but the words died in his throat when Leo, who hadn't spoken a single word in 3 years, suddenly stood up and looked at his father. The little boy pointed a trembling finger at the papers and then at Amara, his voice clear and hauntingly steady. "She is right. Daddy, don't sign the bad paper. Before we continue with this incredible story of hidden genius and ultimate betrayal, we want to get to know you better. Who is watching with us today? Please let us know in the comments what city or country you are tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. And if you enjoy stories where the underdog finally gets their justice, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button right now to help us bring you more. Mark Harrison was a man built on the foundation of his own ego, a titan of industry who believed that wealth was the only true measure of intelligence. He had hired Amara 6 months ago through an agency that specialized in discreet domestic staff, specifically looking for someone who wouldn't ask questions. Amara was perfect for the role, quiet, efficient, and possessing a magical touch that seemed to soothe Leo's frequent sensory meltdowns. Mark never wondered why a woman with her vocabulary and poise was working for a nanny's salary. He simply assumed she was another person looking for the American dream. To him, she was a shadow in the hallway, a provider of coffee and childcare, a person whose existence was defined entirely by her service to his household. But while Mark spent his nights drinking scotch and staring at failing stock tickers, Amara spent her nights reading the books in his library that he used only for decoration. She understood the nuances of the market better than the Ivy League graduates Mark hired, because she had once been one of the people who shaped that market. Long ago, before the tragedy that forced her to disappear and reinvent herself, Amara was the oracle of Wall Street, a woman who could predict a market crash by the way the wind blew. But tonight, the past and the present were colliding in Mark's study, and the stakes were higher than any trade she had ever executed in her previous life. Mark stared at his son in a daze, his heart hammering against his ribs as the silence in the room became suffocating. "What did you say, Leo?" Mark whispered, his voice cracking as he took a step toward the boy who had been a ghost in his own home. Leo didn't answer. The window of communication had already closed, and he retreated back into his world of silence, clutching Amara's hand for comfort. Mark turned his gaze back to Amara, his suspicion fighting with the desperate hope that his son's voice wasn't just a hallucination. "How could you possibly know about the merger details?" "Those files are encrypted and password protected on my private server," Mark demanded, though the fire had left his voice. Amara didn't blink. "You left your laptop open while you were screaming at your brokers on the balcony last night, Mr. Harrison. And you just decided to give yourself a crash course in corporate law while you were dusting the keyboard? Mark sneered, trying to regain his sense of superiority. I didn't need a course, Amara replied coolly. I saw the shell company names. Blue Horizon Holdings is a front for Julian's offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Mark laughed, a harsh, dry sound. Julian is my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding. He's been my CFO for 12 years. Then he has had 12 years to learn exactly where you are vulnerable, Amara countered, stepping closer to the desk to point at a specific line of text. Look at the liquidation preference. If the company's valuation drops by even 5%, Julian gains full voting control of the board. Mark looked at the numbers, but his brain was too clouded by stress and whiskey to see the trap that was so obvious to the woman standing before him. You're a nanny, Amara. You're not a financial analyst. Stay in your lane before you get yourself fired for more than just insubordination. He grabbed his jacket and stormed out of the room, leaving Amara and Leo alone in the dim light of the study. Amara sighed, stroking Leo's hair. She had tried to save him, but some men are so blinded by their own light that they cannot see the cliff right in front of them. The next morning, the Harrison estate was buzzing with the arrival of Julian, a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes and whose suits cost more than a teacher's yearly salary. Julian walked in like he owned the place, tossing his briefcase onto the dining table and calling out for coffee without even looking at who was serving it. Amara brought the tray, her face a mask of professional indifference, while Julian leaned over Mark's shoulder, urging him to sign the final documents. This is it, Mark. Once the ink is dry, we'll be the biggest players in the tech sector. No one will be able to touch us, Julian whispered with a predatory grin. Mark held the pen, his hand hovering over the signature line, but Amara's voice from the night before kept echoing in his mind. He looked at Julian, then at the Blue Horizon clause, and then at Amara, who was quietly clearing the breakfast plates in the background. Wait, Mark said, pulling the paper back. I want to take one more look at the valuation adjustments. Something feels off about the percentages. Julian's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a flicker of irritation crossing his face before he smoothed it back into a mask of friendship. Don't get cold feet now, buddy. We've gone over this 1,000 times. The lawyers have cleared it. It's a standard clause. Standard for who? Amara's voice cut through the room like a gunshot. Julian spun around, his eyes narrowing as he finally took notice of the maid who had dared to speak during a multi-million-dollar closing. Excuse me? Mark, why is the help talking while we're conducting business? This is highly inappropriate, Julian snapped. Mark didn't stop her. He was watching the way Julian's hands were starting to fidget with his expensive cufflinks, a tell he had never noticed before. Amara walked over to the table, ignoring Julian's glare. It's standard for a hostile takeover, Mr. Harrison, not for a partnership. Julian let out a loud, mocking laugh. Mark, surely you aren't listening to the woman who scrubs your floors? This is embarrassing. Explain it, Amara, Mark said, his voice low and dangerous. Amara didn't hesitate. She began to dismantle Julian's entire financial structure with the precision of a master surgeon. She explained the triple-dip interest scheme, the hidden debt obligations, and the way the merger would trigger a mandatory buyback that Mark couldn't afford. As she spoke, her vocabulary shifted from the simple speech of a nanny to the complex, high-level dialect of a seasoned financial veteran. Julian's face went from pale to ghostly white as he realized that this woman wasn't just guessing, she was reading his soul. Who the hell are you? Julian hissed, his composure completely shattering. No uneducated nanny knows the difference between a mezzanine loan and an equity flip. Amara reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn leather wallet. She didn't pull out an ID, but a folded yellowed newspaper clipping. She smoothed it out on the table. It was a cover of a major business magazine from 10 years ago, featuring a younger Amara with the headline, "The Oracle Who Predicted the Great Fall." Mark gasped, his eyes darting between the magazine cover and the woman standing in his kitchen. You're Amara Vance. You disappeared after the 2016 crash. I didn't disappear, Amara said softly. I retired. I lost my husband in that crash, and I realized that money didn't mean anything if you had no one to share it with. I chose to live a quiet life, to care for children who needed love more than they needed a trust fund. But I won't watch another good man be destroyed by greed. Julian lunged for the papers, trying to grab them and leave, but Mark was faster. He pinned Julian's hand to the table with a grip of iron. Security! Mark shouted, and within seconds, his private guards entered the room. Take Mr. Julian to the holding room and call the authorities. I want a full forensic audit of every account he has touched in the last decade. Don't let him take so much as a ballpoint pen with him. As Julian was dragged out, screaming threats and curses, the room fell into a profound, heavy silence. Mark turned to Amara, his face a mixture of deep shame and overwhelming gratitude. He realized how close he had come to losing everything. I don't know what to say, Mark whispered, looking at the floor. I treated you like you were invisible. I insulted your intelligence every single day. You saw the world through the lens of your bank account. Mark, Amara said, not with malice, but with the wisdom of someone who had seen it all. But you have a son who needs you to see him. And you have a legacy that is worth more than just numbers on a screen. Mark looked at the magazine clipping again. You saved me. Not just my money, but my life. I would have been in prison for Julian's crimes within a year. He took a deep breath and looked her in the eyes. I don't want you to be my nanny anymore. Amara, I don't think I can even afford your real hourly rate. I want to offer you a partnership, 50-50. We rebuild the firm together. You lead the strategy, and well, I'll learn to listen. Amara looked toward the doorway, where Leo was standing, holding his favorite stuffed animal and watching them with wide, curious eyes. On one condition, Amara said, a small smile finally breaking across her face. Anything, Mark promised. We finish our board meetings by 5 p.m. every day. Because Leo needs his father to play catch in the yard. And I need my weekends to teach him how to read. Mark laughed. A real, heartfelt sound this time, and he walked over to scoop his son up into his arms, tears stinging his eyes. Deal, Mark said. Starting today, we do things differently. From that day on, the Harrison Vance firm became the most respected name in the city, known not just for their wealth, but for their integrity. Amara never forgot where she came from, and she used her new position to fund schools and programs for children who had been overlooked by the world. And Mark? He became a man who realized that the most important person in the room is often the one you least expect. He learned that true brilliance doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears a simple cotton uniform and carries a child's toy. Together, they showed the world that when you combine a brilliant mind with a compassionate heart, you can build something that lasts forever. Thank you so much for staying with us until the very end of this journey. If you enjoyed seeing Amara reclaim her throne and save the day, please give this video a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story of justice and inspiration. We appreciate every single one of you, and we'll see you in the next video.